7.5 wins for the Seattle Seahawks. It might be early, it might be before the draft, but the sports books are always ready to take your bet. I say smash the over. 7.5 wins is ridiculous. That's a ridiculous number for the Seattle Seahawks, especially considering what they've always done in the past. Now, it's a completely new coaching staff, a revamped roster. 7.5 is fair, but it's still ridiculous in my head. I understand odds makers might be smarter than us sometimes, and sometimes they're wrong. And at the end of the day, for me, the Seahawks have had fewer than 9 wins one time in the last 13 years. Since 2011, Seattle has had fewer than 9 wins only once. And 7.5 just doesn't seem like a fair amount to me, especially considering how low it really is on a list of odds, right? Right now, you have the Carolina Panthers at 4.5 and the New England Patriots at 4.5. Broncos and Titans are at 5.5. At 6.5, you have the Raiders, the Vikings, the Cardinals, and the Giants. And then at 7.5, the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Commanders. Are we better than the Saints? I think absolutely. Are we better than the Commanders who don't even know who their quarterback's going to be? I think absolutely. And above us at 8.5 wins is the Chargers. That's fair. They have Justin Herbert. They got Jim Harbaugh. The Chicago Bears, the Rams, the Jaguars, the Steelers, the Bucks, the Browns, the Colts. You have the Texans and Jets at 9.5 wins. You have obviously all the good teams now. At 10.5, the Cowboys, Falcons, Eagles, Dolphins, Packers, Lions, Bengals, Bills. 11.5, you have the Chiefs, 49ers, and Ravens. But for the Seahawks to be categorized in between that bubble of the Bears, I mean, the Bears have more wins, but I'm saying in the bubble. But they're in the same group as the Commanders and Saints, and only one win higher than the Giants, Cardinals, Vikings, and Raiders. It just seems like a low number to me. I'm basing this less off the fact that, we don't know what the coaching staff's going to be realistically. I think they're going to be good. I think a lot of people think it's going to be a good coaching staff, at least long term. Mike McDonald seems like he is that guy. He seems like the defensive Sean McVay, as many people would say. But at the end of the day, why would they be that bad? I get there's some change to this roster. I get Bobby Wagner's not there, and I get that Jordan Brooks is gone, and I understand that Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs aren't there. And, I mean, at the end of the day, is our safety group that much worse? Having Julian Love still and, Rayshon Jenkins, and then we might get somebody from the draft, or you have a guy like Jarek Reed that might be in that spot next year. Is it that much worse than a team that had Quandre Diggs and Julian Love, essentially? Because Jamal Adams didn't play. We know that. And then at the linebacking group, now we have Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker. How much worse is it than Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks? Forget the names. Forget the love we have for Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner is still amazing in general. He was awful in coverage, though. Jordan Brooks was awful in coverage. It's a passing league. How much worse are we? If you want to argue the fact that we are worse at those positions, that's totally fair. But how much worse? Now, while that happens, on the other side, on the other pieces of the defense, we brought back Leonard Williams. Our defensive line in general is only getting better. Uchenna Nwasu's coming back. Boye Mafe is great. Leonard Williams. And you have, obviously Jaron Reed and a lot of different pieces there that the defensive line is going to be fine. On top of what we might do at the draft. Mike Morris is coming to his second year. Derek Hall is coming into his second year. And then you also look at, the fact that the corners are still all around. We still got Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen and Michael Jackson and Trey Brown. And Artie Burns came back, and you never know what we do in the draft. And then on the offensive side, you still have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and you re-signed Noah Fant, and you got Farrell Brown, who's an upgraded tight end as tight end too. You still got 3 really good receivers. The offensive line is patchwork, but they're gonna work on it through the draft, and they have a lot of competitions going, which I like. You have a competition of Nick Harris and Olusegun Oluwatumi at center, and you got Anthony Bradford and Ankrum, however you say it, at guard competition. They're going to fill in these spots. Geno Smith's the quarterback. How much worse are we? Are we really going to be a team that's below 500 when we've seen what this team can kind of do? And most people on the team are either ascending or we filled them in with younger guys in a lot of spots at safety, at linebacker. Like, the team's getting younger, I understand, but that doesn't always mean you're going to decrease in wins. Sometimes that's a positive, and a new philosophy and a good coaching staff. So overall for me, I just find it quite interesting in general that right now when people look at the Seattle Seahawks, they might think that this team is just much worse than last year. To me, that's not the case at all. As I mentioned earlier, I understand the 7.5. I get it. When it comes to Vegas and it comes to betting, new coaching staff, revamped roster. I'm saying as a Seahawks fan who undisputedly is biased sometimes, don't get me wrong. But I'm realistic. I'm not saying we're going to be a 12-win team. I'm not saying we should be with the Chiefs and 49ers or with the Cowboys or Falcons, Eagles, Dolphins at 10.5 wins. I'm not even saying we should be with the Jets and Texans at 9.5. 8.5? Maybe 9? Over under? A 500 team? A slightly above 500 team like we've done, 12 out of the last 13 years? I don't think this organization, whether it's from ownership down to John Schneider, down to the new coaching staff and the players that were here last year already, they don't accept mediocrity. If they were going to, they wouldn't bring back Leonard Williams this year. They wouldn't keep DK Metcalf on this roster. They would have moved off Geno Smith and just, started with a young quarterback. They're trying to win. I'm not saying they're trying to win the Super Bowl this year. They're obviously trying, but I'm saying they might be realistic enough to know that they're not a Super Bowl contender. They're not at the top of that list. They're not at that, like I said, Chiefs, 49ers, Ravens level yet. But they're not a 5, 6, 7-win team. This team is at least a 9 to 10-win team. So it shocks me that Vegas has them at 7.5, which tells me hit the over. Bet over 7.5. It's not betting advice. It's just my thoughts. But over 7.5, Seattle Seahawks win total on the season. 8 wins would be a disappointing season for this team. 8 and 9, no thank you. Unless the coaching staff is worse than the Pete Carroll coaching staff, and we kind of downgraded this team with the roster we had last year, with the movement we made this year with that roster, should be over 8 wins. So we should be at 9 or 10 wins, I would say, is the level we're looking at. 9 and 8 means we're kind of the same as last year, which I would totally understand happening. But being much worse than last year, 2 wins less at a 7-win team, absolutely not. So I'm always ready for the Seahawks to be a little bit underdogs, though. But hit the over. That's the truth.